Hey guys, welcome back into another video in the series I'm Turning 30. This is a series where I talk about my life, whether that's things in the past, things that are happening at present, or things that will happen in the future. And as you can see today, I'm going to be talking about living abroad. If you didn't see my 2/3 checkpoint video, this idea actually comes from one of the comments there, so if you have a idea for a video or something you want me to talk about, please leave it down in the comments down below. Now, as far as living abroad goes, many people that are viewers of this channel or know me at all know that I'm living in Japan currently. But this is not technically my first time living abroad. I also lived in Mexico about 10 years ago, although that situation was a little bit different than what I'm doing now. Now, obviously, I think that it's safe to say anybody that moves abroad has expectations to what it will be like. What will the city that they live in be like? What will the food be like that they eat? What will pretty much everything that they have be like? And then in regards to those things, you often have reality set in. Now, when I lived in Mexico, it was my first time really being on my own, even though I was living with somebody else throughout the entire time I was there. It was my first real time away from family and friends and really anything that I knew. So that experience within itself really allowed me to figure out how to get by, how to cook, shop, manage money, do a bunch of different smaller things that you kind of need to learn how to do as you become an adult. When I was in Mexico, I didn't necessarily have any expectations versus reality of how I was going to be because for the most part, the reasons I was there doing something religious, I kind of knew what the expectations were and it was very close to my reality. If anything, the differences were what did I expect the area to be like and look like? What did I expect the food to taste like versus what it actually was? Now, I lived right on the border of Mexico and the US, and I didn't really know anything about it. I didn't know anything about Mexico in general. So my expectations, I would say, were very low for the type of living that I expected to have. Now, in reality, I wouldn't say things were the greatest. I had plenty of places that were run down, had a bunch of bugs inside, spiders that were giant and on our wall, like those like huntsman spiders and things like that in our house. There were some less than ideal situations and living conditions that I was exposed to. But I think experiencing those things at that young age, although it was not what I really expected to happen, realizing that it does happen, and while it may be temporary for me, there are people that are in similar situations or, just our neighbors that are right next by that are maybe not dealing with the exact same things, but obviously have the exact same dangers of things happening to their homes. And that's the real reason I wanted to start out by talking about kind of a small portion of me first living abroad in Mexico, is that although I want to focus more on the Japan aspect from now on going forward in the video, is that experience really did shape how I looked at different cities and how people lived and really where to set my expectations or if to have any at all. Now, when I first got the acceptance into Japan and I learned that I was going to be placed in Kyoto, obviously I got excited and looked at the prefecture. I had visited Japan in 2017. I had been to downtown Kyoto. I hadn't been anywhere else necessarily. But if you talk to people about Japan, Kyoto is one of those locations that a lot of people know that they want to go to if they visit Japan. So I was obviously excited being close to somewhere that's well connected, that I can get to many of the major cities in Japan very easily without having to go through the middleman. But I didn't know what city I was going to be placed in, so I started combing through the entire prefecture and figuring out what would be the farthest city away from downtown Kyoto, the city where everybody visits when they come to Japan. Or I would say most people visit when they come to Japan. And wouldn't you know it, reality comes and I essentially got the farthest city from Kyoto City. There are a couple of cities that are a little bit farther out than where I'm at, but I have one of the northernmost placements in Kyoto Prefecture. Now, I didn't necessarily expect to be put in the city, I didn't necessarily expect to be put in the countryside, and I didn't really prefer either of those options. I was just happy to be given the option to go to Japan at all. I guess I don't know if this is necessarily an expectation, but I just didn't realize how small certain towns can be and really function. It's so odd to me that no matter which direction I essentially run from my apartment, I'm 15 minutes from the edge of town. There's pretty much no chain stores here. As you've seen in some of my other videos, especially the one where I did kind of just walking around my town and showing you it a couple weeks ago, not a lot of people are out and about on the streets. It's not like a ghost town or anything, but it's not just like this feeling that you would have when you see Japan, when you see Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, the big cities. There's people constantly around every corner, people always walking by. And here, you could sit on a street and no one could pass you for hours. And for any like facilities, you don't really get options. Again, I don't know if I necessarily had expectations, but there are just really not choices here. You get one internet provider. They're the only ones out here. You want a bank, you get one type of bank choice. There are two supermarkets that are like big and have like everything that you would need at a regular supermarket. One of them is like the main hub one in town, and then there's another one that I actually go to just because it's closer to my house. Not a lot of choices there either. And that includes the products that they have in the stores. Just in general, stores in the city, compared to the stores that I have here, have different products. But I think it's hard for me to kind of keep talking about what expectations are versus reality, just because I wasn't necessarily sure what to expect. Countryside Japan is just not something that I really could prepare myself for with how small my area is. It's not like there was a lot of like YouTube videos or research that I could do. The person that was here before me, my predecessor, didn't really give me a whole lot of information, and when I got here, didn't really leave me a whole lot, and it just essentially was me starting from scratch, building up everything that I own, all the furniture, everything that I decided to buy was pretty much just all me. So luckily in that sense, I got to shape my reality. If we're going to look at things that have been easy versus difficult, I think a lot of the ones that immediately come to mind are the difficult ones. When I think about the easy ones, it's stuff that maybe it's just because I don't notice because it's just easy for me to do. But I guess something that I had never done that turned out being easy was honestly teaching. Now, keep in mind, I'm more of an assistant teacher, not really a main teacher most of the time, so I don't have to follow a curriculum. I don't have to come up with a lesson plan for every single class that the students have. I'm more there as a supplementary kind of piece to a lot of the lessons. Every once in a while I'll have my own lessons, but I generally know pretty far in advance and I can plan something. I'm not necessarily sure if a lot of people know this or not, but I don't really have the biggest affinity for talking in front of people. Now, on the internet it's different because I'm just talking to a camera and it goes out to the ethos and people watch it, and I'm not in front of this huge giant crowd. And when I first came to Japan, I knew that I had this fear or like drawback about myself. I knew that that was kind of there, and I was really worried kind of going to my classes. But if anything, pretty much after the first day or so and just kind of like figuring out the vibe of how the classes go in Japan, I was pretty good. Easy to talk to the students, easy to do the lessons. When I did have to do my first like lessons as the main teacher, it really wasn't that big of a deal. I really felt like I kind of got it quickly, and made me feel like if I ever did decide to pursue like a master's in teaching and get like a teaching degree and teach in the US, that would be something that I would be able to do in that regard. Again, the students and the way of life here is a little bit different in how they handle their studies, so that would be a whole nother can of worms to kind of dissect, but that has been something that's been easy for me to kind of do that I didn't expect. Now, something that's been really hard, and a lot of people I think know back home, because I mentioned it to a lot of people back home, is just missing out on events or things that happen in people's lives. Whether or not it feels like a big deal to them or not, it feels weird like missing out on these things and being here. And it's just like, I know this a big event is going on, and essentially I'm just living a normal everyday life and not experiencing this special day or sad event or just any event regardless of the emotion or thing that's happening on that day. I just don't get to experience it with those people. Obviously I'm having tons of cool experiences for myself, but it's something that's been really difficult for me to swallow, not being there for the people that I care about. It almost feels like I'm being selfish in a way by being here and not being around for those people. And I don't want to just like keep harping on a bunch of difficulties that I've had, so I'm just going to do just one more that I want to add on that I don't think I really knew about myself. It makes sense that I have it, but I didn't really know. And that's the fact that I really need a variety of places to eat. don't get me wrong, I do like a lot of the Japanese food, and it's not just Japanese food, and then it's not like there's a huge variety. There's just genuinely not a lot of like restaurants and places to eat around here that serve different things. Around my area, there's a lot of places called izakayas, which essentially is kind of like a bar type food or like pub food, and they all essentially serve the same thing. They have their specialties at each place, but it's nothing too different from one another. And even with the specialties that they have, there's not that many of them. That's been something that's been really hard for me to kind of digest. I've obviously been able to cook and make my own meals a lot more, which, you know, kind of saves me money, even though food's pretty cheap here and it's cost me about the same as going out. But that's something that I've really missed, is being able to go to a restaurant, to go to even fast food places. Like, just where I'm at just doesn't have that. If I was in another place in Japan, this probably wouldn't be an issue. But I just don't have that many places that I can go to that are close by. And if you're curious, there's no delivery apps here. I don't get Uber Eats or DoorDash or Grubhub or any of those things. None of those exist here. So if I want something, no matter what I'm doing, how long the day is, what events are planned, I have to physically go out to that location. Hopefully they have room for me, depending on the amount of people that are there, and then eat at that restaurant. And on top of that, a lot of the times I'm doing it by myself. There's not a huge population of people that are my age around here. There are a few friends that I have in town, and I have gone out with them. You might have seen some on my Instagram story, especially recently. But it's just not something that happens super often. So yeah, I just kind of miss that aspect of being... this isn't necessarily just being in the US, it's just like being in like a bigger city. I think overall being here has just taught me, like, while I can live in the countryside and it's not a big deal, I could just spend the rest of my life in this type of situation. It's not something that I would thrive in. It's not something that I want to continually be a part of. Like, if that could be just an active change that I can make, I would like to make that change. Now, to get on to more cultural differences, I think one of the biggest ones that's like super noticeable is definitely the drinking culture here. Whether you're alone or you go with coworkers or you have a giant party, there is just a crazy drinking culture here that like you hear about, but it's just so different once you're in it and just exposed to it constantly. You know, you get questions about like, oh, what do you normally drink after work? Or you go out with coworkers and it's just like everybody's drinking, or there's a giant party where everyone at the school is drinking. And it's not just schools that do this, it's just companies in general. You have a big event or you go do something big and then you all go out drinking together. And it's just like this way to get to know people and talk to people. And it's so strange how social and active people get at these gatherings. They really want to get to know people that they normally don't talk to or maybe have reservations about. I feel like whenever I go to one of these, if I go with someone that doesn't know who I am, as soon as the drinks kind of get in them a little bit, they're much more apt to talking to me, especially trying broken English, or if I respond with my just super great Japanese, not bad at all, definitely not broken. They want to see the limits of my Japanese, and it's kind of the same way for me. It's like, oh, I've got the liquid confidence in me to speak Japanese to this person that I have never talked to or know anything about, even though we work together. Something else that I think might be sort of self-explanatory, but just want to cover, is that no matter what country you go to, no matter where you live, no matter what you know about that country, and maybe the stereotypes or overarching things that you think all people know about, it's probably not true for a lot of people. Easiest one to bring up about Japan is anime. I mean, sure, a lot of people in Japan know what anime is, but I'd say the same ratio of people don't watch it as they do in the US. Like, if you talk to a bunch of different people, even the kids at the high schools I teach at, many of them don't watch anime. They don't care for it, they don't like it, and they don't watch it. And I think that's the same as it is in the US. There are people that know what it is, but don't care for it. So it's like, even though anime is like a super cultural thing here, you can't just expect everybody to know what it is, or new shows, or that they've seen like these really popular shows, because a lot of people haven't. And that also goes for things that you think people might not know about because they live here in Japan. You really just can't tell what people are into and what they know about. Whether you're in the countryside of Japan and cities in Japan, people have a shocker wide variety of hobbies no matter where you go. I'm not really sure where the time is at on this video, and I don't want it to be super long, so I'm going to end it on this cultural note that just drives me up the wall, and that's the garbage system in Japan. Oh my goodness, if I could change anything, it would be the garbage system. It drives me absolutely insane. Actually, I think I can show you from here. Let me just twist the camera right there. Yeah, you can only see one. Let me see if I can move the camera. Yeah, you can kind of see over there. So as you can see right here where my finger is, there is 1, 2, 3, 4 garbage cans, and there is one out of frame that you cannot see. That means I have 5 different garbage cans. I have to separate my garbage into 5 separate piles. I have to separate my garbage into 5 different things. And that doesn't include other items that cannot go into the garbage cans that need to be completely different and not put into any of the 5. I need to completely separate other things and put them just to the side for special garbage days. Now granted, my city is a lot worse than other cities that I have visited or seen, but regardless, it drives me crazy. And they have like a system, and I think this is pretty similar, but there's like a designated spot where everybody brings their trash to, and you can only bring specific bags on specific days. And if you bring it other days, or if that bag has something that's not meant for that bag inside of it, they will not take it, and you have to bring the garbage back to your apartment or home until the day where that trash is actually due. It's a mess. It drives me crazy. When I first got here, I had a few times where I had to take it. I haven't had it since, but just like really actively having to like think about it, and it's just like there's barely any difference in these materials and things that I'm throwing away. I don't know why you have them separated this way. And the fact that Japan has so many single-use plastics and random garbage that they shouldn't have to have with products makes you're just opening all these garbage bins with one product and throwing all the way into different spots. It's just a mess, and I hate it. It's the worst. And that's it. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say. You know, if we're going off a quick lightning round, I like the food. The time has been pretty easy. Job's been pretty easy. The transportation in the countryside's a little weird because I don't have as much access to as many trains as they do in the city, but kind of get used to it while you're out here. And then I feel like a lot of the other small cultural things, whether that's bowing or little stamps that you have to put on documents, it's just not that big of a deal, and you kind of get used to it within like the first month of living here. And yeah, the hardest part is just being away from people that you care about. That's honestly the hardest part, for me at least. The easy stuff is stuff that you thought you were going to be afraid of, and you just end up kind of being like, oh, I'm actually not that bad at this. Oh, and the language. The language is also very difficult. I definitely could put more time into studying, but at the same time, it's like you want to experience Japan, and I don't want to dedicate my entire time in Japan to studying Japanese, which, I don't know, maybe some people are okay with that. It's hard to figure out, I feel like, a good balance. I just don't want to dedicate all my time. I do study. I did just take a Japanese proficiency test recently, so we'll see how that goes. The results come out in February. But that's something that has been difficult as well, as the language, no matter, I feel like, how much I study or how much I put into it. And it's not like a little amount, but the amount that I put in is, I just feel like it's so hard to just look and see results. And that's just because English and Japanese are just such different languages. But yeah, that's it for the Living Abroad video. Let me know if there's something glaring that you think that I missed that I probably can cover in another video. I'm tried to kind of encompass what the comment on my last video said and kind of just like think of a couple of things or a few things for each point listed. So hopefully I kind of covered or scratched that itch that you were looking for. If not, again, just leave me a comment, be like, I want to hear about this thing specifically about living abroad, and I could probably make it into its own video. But thanks once again, guys, for stopping by. I really do appreciate you watching this series, and we're almost into 2024, which is crazy. This entire year I've been in Japan. Wild. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.